Okay, hi everybody. Yeah, so I'm just going to do a quick presentation. I'll try and run through it very quickly just to show you a little bit about the work that I do in Australia and applications, and it was something that was asked while in the field about sort of how I set up my sites and the use of image velocimetry. So for those who haven't explained, I've been involved in it for about 10 years now. Spent 2 years offline to be able to try and validate the methods for my employees at the Queensland government, and then we developed it and promoted it, operationalised it nationally. And the reason I started getting into it was because Australia's pretty big. That's my office location just there, and that was the dark area, the area that the 8 of us cover from our office. It's actually now comes down here, it's even bigger, and no more staff. So obviously trying to do monitoring in that kind of environment and these kind of obstacles is quite a challenge. So when I heard about, wow, we can do this from a camera, you can imagine my excitement. And staff numbers, which we've talked about. We never have enough staff numbers and never enough left, and then they'd come back from the field trips. Tricky, as I say, big area, very remote. Trying to get to places to do flow measurements is very problematic and very dangerous. This is actually the dry season, not the wet season. And when you battle your way through and you get to a site, as we've talked about, you're facing something like this. What do you do? So, image velocimetry methods, they help you get data where you're not going to risk putting anything else in the water. And Queensland, like everywhere else, we've had some very serious flooding over the years. This was a particularly nasty event in 2011. This is the city centre, and a wall of water came through and killed a number of people. So, again, image velocimetry methods can help us in these sort of situations, these sort of flood events that we hear more and more of. And as we've talked about some recently, this is one from one of our monitoring stations. We get very fast rises off the mountain streams. So, again, how do you measure these sort of things? How do you quantify and capture all of this data? Typically, we're down here measuring this recession, but we're missing a whole load of information about how that site behaves. And image velocimetry provides a solution to that. We talked a little bit about rating curves, and I was explaining about what we try to use it for the target. So again, remote area site. You can see here, that was the highest measurement done sometime between 1980 and 1990. Well, we're talking about 30 QMEX, but our rating curve goes up well over 1,000 and extends. So imagery methods allow us to really get some data in here, provide some secure, good, reliable data to our customers and people using that. I showed this one earlier. We have a wet and a dry season, much like yourselves here in Costa Rica. And that's our wet season. So, and this is all dry. So, when you saw it on the camera, it may be there for 2 or 3 years, but you know, this is the period we're trying to capture in these events. So, very opportunistic. So, for people there to capture those events, very hard. The cameras on site provide a solution. Image velocimetry, we've talked about it a little bit. It's been around for a while, and comments like here, it's just a fancy float method. Well, it kind of is, but it kind of isn't. There's a lot more to it than that. But the basic principle is very much the same. So it isn't anything new, is the point I'm trying to make. Hydraulics have been around for a long time. So when we first started working with the imagery techniques, my role was to look at the different algorithms. So we looked at LSPIV. This is what a floods, a drone video from one of the floods way back in 2017. And the SCIV, which I've been showing you the software, was the other method and was the method that we chose to run with. And as I've been trying to explain to you in regards to those velocity lines, this is and those SDI images. And Salvador touched on this a little bit earlier this morning. Each one of those blue lines that you've been putting in the software and the direction of flow stacks all the pixels along that search line, and as the tracer goes down, these were the the angle patterns that we were seeing in that SDI analysis that I was explaining that you could identify and correct. And the type of the angle obviously relations to flow. Some of our installations that we've set up, these were some of our first ones. As obviously when I was validating it, I had to have sites installed across the state. So we have here one of our monitoring sites with a camera just on a large pole. This is a little bit of an independent solution. It's just off 5-6 meters from the gauging hut, looking down to the river. You can see here, this is quite a large river. It will go all the way over here. But this was the best view because the gauging station isn't always the best view to record this information. And this was a standalone application that we had to put in because the gauging station was on the other bank. But the right bank was the best position for it. Again, an IP camera mounted on a 6-meter pole, a little power source, and this one had comms just in the groundwater shelter box there on the ladders. So yeah, so we tried a lot of different solutions at the start. Again, remote area that I work in. These are kind of temporary setups. Most of our setups are temporary to begin with, but these are simple. We're out in the field, the gauging station's again on the other bank. Just put in a post, straps to stabilise it so the camera doesn't wobble. Everything's stored on site. We've got a camera, a battery, and a solar panel to try and keep it going. And we'll install that in November, and then we'll get back there in June and download, and hopefully we've got a number of sweet videos. Again, this is another one just bolted into the rock on the post, looking downstream. Again, unfortunately, the best view of the river was on the opposite bank, where you had to climb down the cliff and up the cliff. So we've had to carry all the gear. My offside was not happy. And then this one's we've installed this year. Again, similar to the other, clear down the gauge line here, mounted on a gauge post, a battery, and that will run over our wet season. And when I get back there in June, hopefully some videos on there that I can use. So it's the flexibility in the types of applications that you can kind of do, especially across some remote areas. And again, trail cameras, we talked about them a lot. Very cheap, very good, and very stable, I would say. They take up to some beatings. This was trail camera mounted again on a 6-meter post with flood. The flood came up and went over the post, snapped the post. We got back there 4 or 5 weeks later after Christmas. This was the trail camera, face down in the mud, been underwater. We pulled the SD card out and we had all the videos still there on the SD card, so we were able to go through and process them. So a $200 trail cam provided us with a record amount of flood data for this particular site, and we quantified that our actual rating curve was about 50% out for the discharges that was recorded, as other people had been telling us, but we did have no evidence, no measurements to prove it. So really good, cost-effective way to capture those images and measurements. We do little sites as well, and this is one of the little ones from the start, so we don't see all the major big channels. Again here, just included this, so you can just see our control points. This is our setup, and again this is a traffic cone, it's really nice. Set them out, record your video with them in, survey them in. That's your calibration for your base project file. And again, this is another one out of our very first sites, and here we've used gauge boards, water quality pits. You can use anything that's there. And again, as I explained in the training, when the water goes over, it doesn't really matter because you've calibrated that video to begin with. So use what's on site, what's around, what you can see in that imagery, and what you can survey in. And that was just our first flight measurement, January 2017, 6 o'clock in the morning. Again, we wouldn't be able to get there. It's a local site, but again, getting hydrographers there to measure at that time. Just and this was the site I showed you earlier for this installation. This is the Herbert River in Ingham. This is us doing our calibration, so you can see it's quite a big channel. That's our Toyota Land Cruiser, just so you have an idea of size and scale. You can see our cones dotted around. A few on the other bank. And with this particular one, we actually had guys in the boat acting as control point. So we would record a video, they'd pull the boat out there, they had the RTK with them. I would record the video with them in that position, and then they'd move And again, so I recorded like 3 or 4 videos as part of the calibration, each one adding a new control point, next video new. And that's how we did that site. And as I was telling you, 8 days later, that's the same site. And it was a record flood event. It's just beaten this year by about another 20 centimetres or so. The water was nearly to the roof of that hut, and 3 metres up the pipe. So it kept talking. I was scrambling to get videos. But at nearly 300 metres wide, we were able to rectify all those velocities. And that's our STI analysis. So that's 280 metres away from the camera, just 3 metre water below, 3 metres below, 280 metres across. So the STI analysis is really, really well. And after that initial event, this is what we had. So we had the orange here is my camera measurements, and that's the peak. Obviously this was a nighttime period. So you can see we've got quite a distinct curve there, looks very nice. This was the existing curve, which was quite wrong, and it was recording way, way, way more water. But then we also had this other collection of measurements on the way down. And so that was that first sort of thing. So a lot of umming and ahhing. This was when we were first starting to use the techniques. And the guy who built this rating curve in the system on no measurements really, well, no measurements, had been in the job for like 45 years. So there's me going to have to go and tell him, I think your rating curve's rubbish, based on some imagery. But yeah, we went through it and he agreed. And we adjusted it, we corrected it based on this data. And then as I was showing you, the next wet season, we had 2 10, 11 metre flood events close together, and we were able to actually, those 2 different curves we got from the camera, we were able to fill in the blanks, and we showed that we had a really nice loop rating at that site. And the black dots here are our ADCP measurements over the prior 12, 13 years that they managed to get. And typically, as you know, they're all on a recession. So the new technology, when you took maybe 1 or 2 measurements, you would think that perhaps the answers are wrong, because it doesn't agree with your rating curve, 20% off. But actually, the new technology and these new methods of the high resolution of measurements actually showing us what that site, how it actually behaves a lot more than the single sporadic measurements that you can collect. So yeah, so just maybe because your imagery measurement may differ from what you might think, doesn't necessarily mean it's the wrong result. So. And in the earlier stages, we did a lot of low flow measurements as well, so a lot of low flow validation. I do a lot of training. Again, training in Iceland here, you can see, once again, setting out those traffic cones, nice sites, getting people, getting people trained up. There's a lot of interest at this time. Training for the guys as well back home, so again, typically what I do, you can see our control points, and I get them to set up the cameras, a little bit like what we did yesterday, a little bit more hands-on, they do all the surveying themselves, but it's really important to gain a really good understanding of how to set these cameras up in the field, which is what we've tried to relay to you over the last couple of days. And an important part of training is building people's confidence with the methods. So again, that's a flow tracker result from the same location, and that's the drone. You can see the velocity structure really follows each other quite nicely. And again, getting people to process their own measurements, like what I've tried with you to do today. And this were the measurements people have done with the software. I'm not touching it. And you can see it agrees with the accepted methods. And that's really important for getting people's confidence, getting people on board with us moving forward with using it within our department. So, convincing the people who have been in the job 30, 40 years that this wasn't just black magic, it will give you a good result. So. But no matter how often you do training, I did the training for the New Zealand guys in 2019. They had big floods in 2021, but they hadn't really got too many cameras in place, but knowledge of the methods meant that they could try and capture some data. So this is a video they took on a helicopter flying over the flood event. So I think it was the South Island, which they then sent to me to try and help out to get that processed, to get some information. And again, another video that came through Again, this is knowledge of the methods. They knew what they should be looking to do from the training that I provided. And this was collected by standing on the bonnet of the car with an iPhone held up and getting the video for me, trying to hold it as stable as possible. You can see the structures in place. They later went back, surveyed in control points from those features that they could see. And they sent it all off to me, and I played and adjusted and did my best and come up. And you can see, even though the channel's 400 meters wide, with the iPhone on top of the car, I came up with what looked a reasonable velocity distribution, total discharge just over 5,000 QMEX, and I sent that back to them, and they were pretty happy with that result and matched in with their sort of findings or what they suspected. So, yeah. So just to go to show how well these methods can be used. So now we've taught you how to use them, we've shown you. Hopefully you can put these into practice just like this. And we talked a little bit about drones. They're really good, really resource efficient. You would have seen with the processing that we're doing. In the software, they're very quick, easy to process, and very easy to collect. It just takes one person and 5–10 minutes on site. So you can get between a lot of sites if need be, if there's a lot of flooding happening in an area. And again, validation, that's what it is, it builds confidence in it. As I was advised to take 4 measurements, you can see you can pick up variation, but you also pick up variation with NECPs. So that's the importance of doing, collecting a couple of measurements and just averaging them with the drone. But yeah, you can see within a few QMEX. So. And again, it's another example using a drone. You couldn't actually get to the site. We were able to use that to get the highest flow measurement since like the 1960s at this site. So again, flying it in. And this is from another river south of us in Cairns. This is the Tully River. So you can see this, the monitoring station is just there. There it is. The guys from our office, they drove the car down here. Obviously they can't go any further. They can't get to the station. We can't put a boat in because the water's lapping around the station, so health and safety. So they parked up on the bridge, they flew the drone, they got these nice images, and they flew down to the gauging station and did the flow measurement with the drone, and we're even brave enough to sort of fly down an angle to read the gauge board. And then we were able to process that up. And the other thing with the drones, with the control points, I showed you this site earlier. We've started using them now just with photogrammetry or structure from motion. So you can see our control points here laid out. And in 10–12 minutes, generally, fly the drone, build a 3-dimensional model. You can get your X, Y, Z values from that very quickly while you're busy setting up the camera. Works really, really well, has some good results. And the other option is, as well with it, you can actually pull out the cross-section if need be, if it's different from another location. So really, really nice application, and another reason to buy a drone. I've shown you guys a little portable. We've started using that recently again. Makes our life a lot much more easier. For those who didn't get a chance to see it, you record the video, you specify your point distance, like the drone measurements and the software that we're talking about. So for scaling, you tell it its distance that you've measured, confirm. So again, this is all done with a phone or an app, tablet. Load your cross-section data if you have it. Set your water level. Set your cross-section again, much like the SCIV desktop software they've been playing with. Set your cross-section and your little blue lines in the direction of flow, how many you want, how long you want them. It's a little more basic than the desktop software. Good storm outside. So once you've got them in the right area, hit Analyze. This is a river in Slovenia. I was doing training with those guys out there. You can see a few ground control points about. So it's analysing the STIs, it's going to measure the velocity and will give us a discharge. There you go. So that's the analysis completed. Pretty quick, pretty straightforward. 65 QMEX with a tablet, just like that. These are the ACP measurements. See a little bit of variation there from the measurements they've done. And I processed some different videos, and other people process them from different angles. So you can see we're pretty much in the ballpark of the ACP, which is really, really nice for just holding a tablet. And yeah, that's me. Thank you. So, contact details.